Okay, good evening, salam. I'm Stanley Heller. I'm Executive Director of the Middle East Crisis Committee, which we founded in Connecticut in 1982. Our purpose today is to give the public a forum to talk about Gaza, a forum denied to us by the Danbury City Council, which said the matter was could not be brought up in the public session before its meeting because it was not in the purview of city government. Our organization believes that the horrors in Gaza belong on the agenda of every public body. Before we start, a word about keeping us safe. We have the room till 7:45 when we have to close and clean up. After our initial speakers, we'll have people give 2-minute remarks. We'll be video recording, but we can turn that off if an individual speaker requests that. Now, what about provocations and trolls? The best thing is not to engage. Sit in stony silence or turn away. Please don't boo or speak out from your seat. That will undoubtedly be edited and stuck up on TikTok and be used against us. We have Ahmed in the back who will help us keep things orderly, though I don't really expect anything at all tonight. Why don't you announce it in a second? Okay. A police officer may pop up at some point. Don't be alarmed. We and the library board agreed on that procedure. The officer will not remain. So Hen's going to talk a little bit about something on the wall.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace be upon you all. Around the room, there are QR codes hanged on the wall. One for the petition to urge the Danbury officials to pass a ceasefire resolution, and the other one, if anyone doesn't want to speak up in the mic, you can scan the QR code and share your comment by typing it in a form, and we can read it or share it for you with the attendees.
Great. And we'll be talking about an event later on in the meeting, something we're going to be holding in Danbury in a week or so. So now I would like to call on Mike Murley. He's an activist for many years on this subject, a radio personality. He does a program called Mic Check. He's active in the Bridgeport Islamic CC. Mike, what does the CC stand for?
Community Center.
Community Center, all right. And he's going to start us off. We'll have a couple people to start us off from up here that are planned, and then we'll call on you. So Mike Murley, please come up. And everybody who speaks, you have to hold the mic pretty close to your mouth for it to have a good effect. Here you go. Stand here.
Thank you, Stan. Oh, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Stan. Thank you to everyone from the community, Sister Iman, Mariam, and everyone, Hind, who's very involved, Sister Saba, Sister Jennifer, I know was there the other night. I can definitely share some thoughts. I'm just happy to be here. I know you guys have a great community here. You all have a wonderful community, and you're doing great work. I was just honored to be with you all at the recent city council meetings and different events. So, as far as some different thoughts, as far as just like Stan mentioned, I was involved with the Bridgeport ceasefire resolution organizing team. Sorry, is this better? Sorry about that. And so one of the big things that was, how that resolution got started was someone that myself and a sister in the Bridgeport Muslim community have known for 6+ years at this point, considered running for office for the first time. Had never thought about running for office before. And then in late summer last year, early fall, someone was like, hey, you should run for office. And they were like, that sounds like a horrible idea because the city council is very oppressive, and the city council in Bridgeport, and just really awful and terrible, and I don't think I would ever want to run for office. That sounds horrible. And the reason why she said that was because on May 9th, 2017, her 15-year-old brother, Jason Negron, was murdered by the Bridgeport Police Department. And that was her name is Jazz Marie Melendez. And so that was Jazz's, she goes by Jazz for short, for anybody that knows her or meets her. And so that was Jazz's entryway into community organizing and activism, was the Bridgeport police brutal murder in broad daylight of her 15-year-old brother, Jason Negron. And there's still been no justice. That officer is still receiving taxpayer funds right now to patrol the streets of Bridgeport. His name is James Boulay. He's a white guy from Ansonia. So Jazz, she started a movement, in that moment, in May 2017, fighting for justice for her brother Jason. A really beautiful and powerful movement, grassroots movement, organizing, protests, all kinds of things. And the city council, along with Mayor Ganem, stood in the way of justice for her and her family. Every step of the way stood in the way of justice, and there were obstacles, and they didn't care about justice for her brother. They didn't care. Something as simple as holding this officer accountable, firing the officer, they didn't care. They were absolutely oppressive towards her and her family, didn't care in any way, shape, or form about the pain and the grief and the suffering that her family, the injustice that her family suffered. And so on Jazz's journey of activism, of social justice, organizing, and community work that began in May 2017, she never thought about running for office because she was like, this was the example that was set, was the city council in Bridgeport. These people who laughed in her and her family's faces time and time again at their injustice, and were not supportive, were not helpful, didn't care in any way, shape, or form about justice for this Puerto Rican teenager who was brutally murdered by the cops. And so, fast forward to last year, someone in Jazz's life was like, hey, have you thought about running for office? And she was like, no, that sounds horrible, why would I ever do that? And then she thought a little bit more about it. And she decided to run for city council. Well, in September of last year, when the primary happened, Jazz garnered more votes than any other candidate running in any district for city council in the entire city of Bridgeport. When she knocked on people's doors, they said, I know exactly who you are. You don't even have to say your name. You don't have to tell me a word about you. I know who you are. I've seen the protests. I've seen the amazing work you've been doing in the community. I know exactly who you are. Gave her a big hug, welcomed her into their homes. When she went around the 138th district in Bridgeport, knocking on doors, they already knew who she was. These are her neighbors, of course, but it was deeper than that. They knew who she was because of the work that she'd been doing, the very pure work, a movement born from love, movement born from loss and grief. And so she won the primary in September in the 138th district in city council in Bridgeport, and then won the general election in November. And now she was on the city council, but between September and November, what happened? October happened, as we all know. And so Jazz and her family are Puerto Rican. They're not Palestinian, they're not Muslim. She saw on social media what was happening. She saw on TV and in the news what was happening, and she said, I can relate to that. I know what that feels like for a government to kill your family member and face no consequences. And so that pure connection and that sort of innate, tangible solidarity, and connection and empathy from someone who understood what that felt like and what that meant to be seeing this tragedy, seeing this massive injustice and oppression unfolding. And she decided in those moments in October into early November, that she wanted her first official act on the Bridgeport City Council, as a Bridgeport City Council member, the youngest woman to ever serve on the Bridgeport City Council at 25 years old, to put forth a ceasefire resolution. She intentionally decided that that would be her first official act as a Bridgeport City Council member. And so for her, it comes from that personal place, that very profound and personal place. And so the first thing that she did was she reached out to myself and a Muslim sister from the community who had been involved in the Justice for Jason movement, the justice movement seeking justice for Jazz's brother since May 2017. And we had become family in these past 6 years, getting arrested together, getting violently attacked by the Bridgeport police, and just facing down fake politicians and the whole nine. We had become family. We'd become close and organized and fought for justice alongside of each other for past 6+ years. And so when Jazz had this idea for the ceasefire resolution, that I think at that time the inspiration for her came from Detroit and what Detroit had, the work that they were doing at that time to try to get a ceasefire resolution passed, because they were one of the first cities that was trying to do this in the country. She reached out to myself and to a sister in the community named Amina, and we, the three of us, started talking and had a couple meetings, and then we just immediately started organizing with the community. And so the Bridgeport Islamic Community Center that Stan mentioned earlier ended up being like the hub of our organizing, so to speak. That's where we held our organizing meetings for the resolution. And yeah, it was never a sure thing. It was never a guaranteed thing. It was a lot of work, a lot of uncertainty, and it still is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of work, because I don't know if anyone is familiar right now with what's going on currently in Bridgeport, but there's a lot of, so the resolution was passed on January, I'm sort of skipping around a lot, but the resolution was passed by the full city council on January 2nd, and ever since there's been a Zionist backlash now. So there's all these people now that are showing up to every city council meeting demanding that the ceasefire resolution be repealed, rescinded by the Bridgeport City Council, and they're calling us every name under the sun, anti-Semitic. They're calling us, awful, awful, horrible things. They're calling the resolution anti-Semitic. There's a lot more details I could get into, but I'll say that on the night of January 2nd, there was this emergency meeting that was held while the full city council was meeting. And it brought together two rabbis and other folks who are Zionists, basically, and Israel supporters, as well as folks from the Bridgeport Islamic Community Center community, as well as folks from the city administration, the city of Bridgeport administration, for an emergency meeting to try to say, well, how can we bring all this? What can we do to get sort of the Jewish community on board? Which I don't even like putting it like that, of course, because it's not about the Jewish community. We had Jewish residents of Bridgeport who stood up. Julian Schaefer, who's a Bridgeport resident and a high school teacher here in Danbury, who grew up in Ridgefield, high school teacher here in Danbury, lives in Bridgeport now. He's Jewish, and he spoke in support of our ceasefire resolution. He's a great guy, and I've been friends with him for several years. We met during the Justice for Jason organizing against police brutality in Bridgeport, for justice for Jazz's brother. Anyway. They tried to say all these different things. So the night of January 2nd, there was a meeting, that in-person meeting at the in City Hall during the city council meeting, to say well, how can we get everybody to agree on this? Which in itself shouldn't have needed to happen, because that's not really the way that the political process works. You've got groups that fight for something, and then there's discussion, and then it's voted on. Either it passes or it doesn't. But now to have something in the 12th hour, because these folks claimed that they didn't know, that they had no idea that there was a ceasefire resolution on the table, or as something that was being discussed, which basically amounted to, we organized, our pro-ceasefire community, we organized, and they didn't. Their side didn't. They were not civically engaged. They were not paying attention even to what was on the City of Bridgeport website, or what was happening at the Bridgeport City Council meetings. If they had, the agenda for the December 4th, 2023 City Council meeting said ceasefire resolution right there in PDF format on the City of Bridgeport website as early as December 1st or 2nd. But now, on just January 2nd, so for a whole month, from December 4th to January 2nd, there was 3 City Council meetings in there. And they just kind of They were, I don't want to say they were asleep, but they were not engaged in the process. They were not paying attention politically. You know, it's like if the Kansas City Chiefs didn't play in any of the playoff games or didn't practice, would they have made it to the Super Bowl, let alone win the Super Bowl? You know, so in this meeting, on the night of January 2nd, while the city council meeting was happening in this other room, there were two rabbis in the room. One wanted, he was not willing to compromise in any way, shape, or form on anything. He basically wanted the ceasefire resolution to say the Bridgeport City Council supports the state of Israel to do whatever it wants. And so, of course, that wasn't, you know, that was not something that, you know, was going to be agreed upon by everybody. The other rabbi in the room, basically, he had like a list of, you know, a list of changes that he wanted made to the resolution language. And he basically said, if you guys make these changes, then I'll sign on and I will support this ceasefire resolution. And he's somebody who's very much identifies as a Zionist, very pro-Israel, if you look at his Facebook posts. And so the changes, you know, they were big deal changes. You know, one of them was, you know, remove all historical context pre-October 7th, 2023 from the language. You know, one of the first whereases was, whereas in 1948, 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly removed from their ancestral homeland so that the state of Israel could be created. Gone. You know, that's what they wanted. They wanted every use of the word occupation next to West Bank or in front of West Bank removed. They wanted every use of the term genocide removed, every use of the term apartheid removed. But looking at all those things, that would still leave the name of the resolution being a resolution calling for an immediate de-escalation and permanent ceasefire in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank, and the overall purpose and intent of the resolution to be the same. There was other changes that they wanted made too as well, but basically someone from our side, the pro-ceasefire side in that meeting that night said, okay, sure, no problem, done, sure, done. Want us to remove all the history? Done. Because it left the name of the resolution as a ceasefire, calling for a permanent ceasefire, and it left the sort of intent and the integrity and the purpose still the same. And so, and that rabbi, he shook everybody's hand in the room, and he said, "Thank you for doing this. Thank you for, wanting to kind of come together like this. Thank you for, I think we did something very, very important here." And he thanked everyone in the room. And then it went back to the city council, and some of the council had felt like skittish before that. But once they heard that there was this rabbi who had signed on and was like saying, I support this, I'm proud of what we did here, then pretty much, I want to say almost unanimously, there were a couple of folks who were absent that night from the council, and there were two people who, I believe it was two who voted against, and so it was like 13 that, out of a council of 20 city council members, 13 voted in support of passing the ceasefire resolution. So anyway, but then that rabbi turned around a couple days later and went on social media and basically rewrote history and mischaracterized what took place in that meeting and said he actually doesn't support at all the ceasefire resolution, all these different things. But anyway, I'm just, I don't know, I wanted to give a little bit of, I guess, context for some of the stuff that went down in Bridgeport and is still going down in Bridgeport. But thank you all for being here and for all the incredible work that you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mike. Now I'd like to call on Rebecca, who is with Jewish Voice for Peace. And she works in the film and TV industry. She's been educating herself on this issue for a long time, but is most active since October 7th. Rebecca.
Hello all. I'm not much of a public speaker,
You have to hold it
but
close.
yeah. So I just came to represent JVP and let you know every day there's more and more, especially young Jewish people, but Jewish people all age, waking up to the indoctrination and the lies we've been fed for years. Now, the indoctrination, I have to tell you, came a lot from a lot of trauma and a lot of places that weren't bad places, but turned to bad things. And for me, it's very sad to see, especially given the Holocaust and all that history, that I feel like we should be a people of all people to know not to dehumanize another group. And I see that just all the time in my community, and I just want to do everything I can to stop that and to re-educate people and say, hey guys, you know, things were projected, the bad deeds of the Germans were projected onto the Palestinian people, and so many things happened that people need to relearn, and just their hearts need to reopen. And that's sort of I'm more of one of those people. I sit at home, I do research, I watch YouTube videos. But what's interesting is that part of my undoing was actually some great Israeli historians who wrote books pointing out the true history, the Nakba, et cetera, what really, really happened, and are, you know, fighting to undo what the history of, you know, that they were taught as children. People like Ilan Pape and Nico Peled kind of can be a great gateway place for people who can't necessarily go on to an Edward Said or some of the great Palestinian scholars, but they're kind of a door to open that to people who may have their hearts not open yet to hear that. And hopefully they'll get to that, because that's just as important. I think Palestinian voices have so long been silenced, and the ability of the Palestinian people to speak their own narrative is something that I would like to try to amplify in my lifetime. And I would love to see one state with rights for all, between the river and the sea, which ironically is used all the time by Likud, and somehow that's okay, but when Palestinian people use it. I was in an interesting place. On October 7th, I was very aware of what was going on in Israel. I was very aware of what was going on in the West Bank. I was aware of a lot of things that most people were not, who are even Jewish people, were not aware of. I'll say to people, like, do you know what the nation state law is? And they look at me blankly. People who think they know what was going on in Israel. And just things like what was going on in the West Bank, the attacks on people in the West Bank. And I just knew that it was unsustainable. So when the actions happened October 7th, it was kind of, you just can't do that to people and not expect something to happen. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves to die. Everyone deserves to have a life, and a good life. And that's just, for me, that's what I want to make, you know, a purpose for my life, if that can be, to help make us all a better world. And JVP is a great organization because it's really taking actions, and I really respect the actions. When they shut down Grand Central, I was like, oh, that was amazing. It's waking a lot of people up, and it's a wonderful thing. So I'll cut myself short and just say I'm here to support you all in any way I can. All right. Thank you.
How many people had heard of Jewish Voice for Peace? Raise your hand. So, okay, very educated people, but most people don't. When the newscasters want to get the Jewish voice, they go to the Jewish federations, which are dominated by right-wing and increasingly extremist people. And those are the voices you hear. But Jewish Voice for Peace, and it's only, I don't know, about 20 years old, has a membership and following of 700,000 and more. So it's a very significant voice. So we were very happy to have Rebecca here. Before I start calling on people, an announcement. You may have seen the terrible news coming from Euromed Human Rights Monitor about Palestinians crushed to death in Gaza by Israeli tanks. This has just come out this week. To highlight that, we're going to hold a protest rally on Saturday, March 16th, here in Danbury. 21 years to the day after Rachel Corrie was crushed to death by an Israeli Caterpillar bulldozer in Rafah. The plan is to meet at the corner of West and Main by the giant flag over the Civil War monument at 1 p.m. that day. And the people we want to influence most is our Congresswoman, Johanna Hayes, Senator Murphy, Senator Blumenthal. They have been appraised about this, and they are not speaking out. So to help you remember, we printed up a flyer. So would you like to hand them out? Just go around and hand them out. Okay. And now, I'm going to call, we have 4 people on the list, and then we'll have, get people to raise hands to speak. And again, if you want the camera off, just tell me, and I will shut the camera off for you. So the first person is Bushra.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Bushra Al-Ibrahim. I'm Palestinian from Gaza, from Khan Yunis. My mother and father, they born there, they raised there, and after they married, they go to the Jordan. And now, all my family, all my part of family, they are suffering there. The story we hear, something we cannot imagine. But I'm not gonna talk about that because all of us know about it, okay? I'm talking about how we're gonna help them down. First, we're gonna start with the tax. This year, it was hard to me to do the tax because this year, I'm paying to kill my people. This is how I felt.
Repeat the mic.
Yes, okay. This year, it wasn't like another year. When you feel you're paying for your family, that's the most hurtful thing you ever feel. My mother, she left Gaza from 50 years. And after 50 years, she could come after she's disabled. That's the only reason they let her go there. There's no other reason. I remember my family from my grandma. She can go because she's over 70. She can come to Jordan to visit us. But she can't wait for 3 months to open the board. For 2 days, or 1 hour, or 2 hours, and they close it. Is she gonna wait for 2 or 3 months again? That's why she couldn't come. Because this doesn't make sense for an old young woman. It's just 4 hours from Amman to Gaza. But she couldn't do it. This is how I remember my family. This is how my life all the time. That's sort of we hear about the others. Like my cousin, she told me that his uncle and his kids and all of the family, 10 of them, they bombed. And my aunt, she was one of the seeing the action. And she had the diabetes. They bombed, then destroyed. And now she's lived with her husband and daughter in a tent. Another aunt, let's continue with this one first. She had the diabetes and she cannot take her medicine. That's for this long time. We're talking from October until they could take her to Egypt by paying 5,000 to let her go from Gaza. 5,000 for per person. And you know, the life there, the 5,000 we're talking about a lot of money there. And the other aunt, she had heart attack because of rape. Now she cannot walk. She lost her that, and she lived with 50 in apartment. This apartment, I'm telling you, is this square. That's it, 50. They don't have water. They cannot wash a shower. They have lease now, and there's a lot of diseases had too. Okay. The food, we know, there's no food. They barely eat. I think this is what you want to hear about our life. This is my life. I'm now almost 40, and this is my life, 40 years old. And it's from before, from 76 years and more, we're living this life. Nobody know, nobody do anything. I was telling أختي man, I don't want to talk to them, because nobody gonna understand. We're living this life for whole years, and nobody cares. Everybody giving an excuses that's worse than the other. And thank you.
Thank you so much. You made a great point about the taxes and our tax money going to pay for this. You know, $3.8 billion every year to Israel, plus all the support of the UN and all the weapons that they sell them that they don't sell to other countries, and so on and so forth. And then just today, the Washington Post came out with their report that Biden had made, I think it was 150 arms deals that they sent all these weapons to Israel after October 7th without even asking Congress. So, you know, eventually, sometimes he says a word here, you say, oh, he's changing his position a little bit. But behind the scenes, when it's important, it's the money and the weapons. Okay. Next is Khalil.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Khalil Al-Kasaji. I'm from Palestine, and as my mother said from before, she is from Gaza, and my father is from the West Bank. Most of my relatives are in Gaza. All of their homes have been bombed and demolished. They live under plastic tents in the winter, and they have no food and clean water. They actually have no water whatsoever. The elderly need medicine, the injured need anesthesia for surgery, and my Aunt Miriam lives in Gaza. She is a diabetic, she needs to be cared for, and she needs the correct necessities to survive. They placed her in a school after she was displaced from her very own home. The bathrooms are packed with other Palestinians because they have nowhere else to go. So imagine the suffering and waiting she has to currently go through. Another example would be the little boy in Gaza who died due to the pain of having his leg amputated without any anesthesia. His father, a doctor in Gaza, was one of the people to amputate his own son's leg. Most people who do not have any courage, most people would not have any courage to do that, or even suggest it. And the Palestinian men are being humiliated in front of the whole world. They are thrown in ditches and being buried alive. As a Palestinian living in America, my only wish is to see my country, where my family originated from, to see my people, to share their pride, to have their courage and their perseverance. But even that I cannot do. My wishes are simple and easy to do. Call for a ceasefire is what you can do to help me. To help the souls of Palestine, don't call it a war, it's a genocide.
Thank you so much. Next is Iman.
It's only 2 minutes, there's no time for all these books. The problem is a long story. It's 76 years old story. This one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I like to tell stories, but thinking to come until today to tell my mother and my father's story. From yesterday, I get very bad nightmares, and I hate to cry. I always think I'm a very strong woman, but I can't stop crying. Even when I was driving, my daughter, she said, "What happened, Mama?" I said, "Nothing." Then she said, "Maybe I should not ask." Because, as they tell you now, it did not start on October 7. It started in the time of my father and my mother. My father named Salah, Ibrahim, Mahmoud, Ahmed, Hamdan. I can continue to 19th generation. He born in a beautiful town called Kawkab al-Hawa Sabuna, a district of Bisan. Bisan is a beautiful city. I have problem say this word in English. From the Canaanites, Canaaniyun city. Bisan is 6,000 year city. Beautiful city. It's in the north. Has many mountains. My parents born in that city, in that district, in the city of Kawkab al-Hawa and Sabuna. Both came from very wealthy families. My great-great-grandfathers, there are two of them. Originally, they are from Jerusalem. Both of them, one was very good in trade, so he decided to go to Nablus, and you think Nablus, the city of Nablus in the West Bank. And he become, if you see our family, Bishtawi, you see we have so many people who are living, now still living in Nablus, Bishtawi. And the other one, he loved land and farm, so he resigned in the north. This area, my grandfather has so many orchards of oranges, lemon, grape leaves. And my mother, she used to enjoy just he has daughters, no sons at that time. My mother was the eldest one. She used to be the big boss in the house, right? So I remember she told me that it was very, Palestinian people are very kind, beautiful people. It's not because they're my people, because this is the truth. My mother, she said when the Haganahs start moving, she remembered my grandfather, Ahmed, sending her with baskets of oranges and lemon to those people who look like something happening to them, to the kibbutz next to them. Because those people, they know the area very well. So Bisan was their target from the beginning. If you see Bisan it has very strategic locations. So they want this district first, so they can control other districts. But Palestinian people like my grandfather, my mother, other grandfathers, they don't have this. They're normal, peaceful people. They have no access to this world. I don't know, I feel the story is so long. I didn't know how I can make it short. I didn't know how to make it 5 minutes, but I'll try my best to just maybe bring some memories which I like to share with you, because there is pain, but also there is beautiful memories. But you know what's happened to me? It's just shocking. I'm 53 years old now, and my father used my father was forced to leave, and my mother, 1948. So they are the result of the Nakba. But I always see this man I didn't know why. My relationship with my father was so strong, and he always tell me stories, but he never told me this story, the story of Nakba. But now, when Gaza happened, I see these soldiers it just traumatized me so much. Like I cannot like sleep because I'm not seeing only the people of Gaza. I see my father, my mother, the story live again life. The suffering you see today, if you were having access to see these videos, the same happened to my parents, to their parents, to over 1 million Palestinians from the Nakba, beside the other Palestinians who moved around. I remember my mother because like before she died, my father, my mother, my grandfather Ahmed, and my grandfather Ibrahim, who they owned half of Bisan, they all died in Jordan. None of them was able to come back from the 1948 to just see their houses or check on them. I still remember my grandmother Amina. She has the key on. This woman is just like, just remembering her, itself is a trauma. Because my grandfather Ahmed and my grandfather Ibrahim and my grandmother Fatima, they died like before I saw them. But the only one grandmother I saw is my grandmother Amina. So I used to be like, I remember I used to be like a kid looking like to her, and I just want to tell you, like, today I brought this book with me for those people who believe the narrative of the Zionists, that the Palestinians left their land or sold their land. They are liars. My grandmother Amina, we still have all the documents that she owned this land. We still have it. We still have it in our homes. My father, as I told you, the reason why I mentioned they were wealthy, they're coming from wealthy families, because I want to tell you what happened to them after. My father was sent to a private school in Bisan, boarding school, because his father was rich. His father, Sheikh Ibrahim, was named Sheikh Ibrahim Abu Sahyun, because not Sheikh from religious point of view, despite he's a religious man, because he's the head of the area. He is the first line court for people. He resolved all the problems of other people. Only problems and the crimes that can't be resolved by him can be sent to the court in Bisan. And they have beautiful houses. My mother, she never forget her garden, her house, how she was running there and planting trees. She never forget this. Even when she was like, my mother passed away around she was 87 years old, but her memory, her body was weak, but her memory was fresh like yesterday, even when she was days before she passed away, about every single memory in Bisan, every single memory in Kawkab al-Hawa, every single memory in Amsabune. She remembered everything. She remembered the lands that her father owned, and they give them also names. This is how Palestinians are part of this land. They know without even books or maps. Actually, there is a map here to Bisan, and my family also, I find out, it's here. This is the district of Bisan, and inside there is a map where my kids sometimes they look because they want to locate the land of their grandparents. My mother told me, she still remember, she was in the bus with her family when one of her cousins was asked by those people who fed them oranges and lemon to come out from the bus, a young man, and shoot him in the front of her. She was 10 years old. She still remember her cousin was one of the first martyrs for nothing, just to create terror. The Haganahs, when they came, their number is nothing. And their strategy to occupy the land of Palestine is by causing terror, like exactly what doing now in Gaza. This is why you see the Gazan today, they are not gonna leave because they know those who left out of fear, they never came back. And my parents are one of them. But what do you expect when you see and you witness Deir Yassin? Deir Yassin, check Deir Yassin in Wikipedia. Check what the Haganahs did to those Palestinians. It just, you read and you will see the images that you see today in Gaza. You know, they talk about rape, and you know how much Palestinian, whether they're Christian or Muslim, Arab, they have so much dignity that rape for them, something, and Israel know that. It is so horrible. Women in Palestine, in that area, they will wish death before somebody rape them. In Deir Yassin, and these documents are classified now, you cannot see them, you will see them one day. In Deir Yassin, they came at 3 a.m. because Yassin was one of the massacres that make most Palestinians to take their daughters and leave. Remember, my father has daughters. He didn't want to see them. My grandfather, he didn't want to see them rape. 3 a.m., they come to Deir Yassin with their tanks, burn houses, but the men there fought them. The villagers fought them with their hands. They even killed some of them. This caused them more angry from those men. And they took them like what you see today, naked. They took one girl, and this is, you can check and you'll find about this, even if Israel tried to delete this history. Raped her in the front of her family, cut her breast, exactly what they're now accusing the people of Hamas of doing. They use this to terrorize Palestinians. One of the stories that my mother mentioned, after Deir Yassin, there's no help for them. They claim, oh, the Arab armies came to fight them and they told them to leave, they will come back. This is a lie, because my father and my mother are more honest to tell their own story than the propaganda of Israel. Israel lie all the time, and I'm so sorry that so many Jewish people believe these lies. Jewish people, with all respect to them, they have to wake up, because you cannot be a people who suffer from a Holocaust and you're causing Holocaust for those people again. I can't even understand. That's why I try my best not to say, make the word Jewish with Israel. This is a Zionist state, and Jewish people, Israeli people, whatever. You need to know that you're living in my mother home. I was willing, when I came to America and I have so many Jewish friends, I was willing, because I love them so much and have built relationship with them, and I started understanding them and their suffering, and never had this before when I was in Jordan. And I asked my mother permission, because I felt I'm going to betray her if I sit with a Jewish man or a woman. But I asked her. She said, no, you can talk to them. She gave me this permission. This woman who witnessed all this pain. And I was thinking, you know what? I think we're here, you and me, my brother, my sister, you're living here in America. What about if make space for those people here? Because I was thinking, these Israelis who born after 1948, it's not their, I was thinking it's not their crime that they born there, that their parents and their grandparents committed. So I was willing, I remember telling this brother, the rabbi, telling him, brother, I am actually willing to share my mother house if there is Palestinians that want to live in that land. The same person, when this Gaza happened, show his color. The rabbi who should fear God, Elohim, Hashem, whatever, he goes to Washington, D.C. to say no ceasefire with all this killing you see today. So my father, I'm going to go back to my father and to this book, because when the killing, the terror continue, the rape for the women, for the daughter continue, they have no choice but to leave. They forcibly left. My father was reading this book. My father has no chance to take money, oranges, or he chose to take one because he was, imagine like why my father brought this book with him. He was 16 years old. He was reading this book. This book is older than the Zionist state. معجم الأدباء, Dictionary of Learned Men. That's my father's book, and there is a stamp from the Library of Pisan on this book. So, my father, my mother found themselves in the other side of the river with nothing, clothes and the book. Where they have to live? They were not able to take anything from their wealth. Imagine those kids who grow up to be their parents, wealthy parents. My mother, she said, there is no place. Just like she remembered her grandmother cleaning one pond room, mud room, has so much of cow feces, clean it, so all these 50 people have to live in that room. But Palestinians are very resilient people. The first things my father did, he refused to be depressed, maybe like me. He started schools to the kids in the tents. Continue teaching until he died. The schools that my father established, they still exist today. The camp that established in Jordan for the Palestinians to come back, 1948, is still in exist. 76-year camp. I remember when I was young, going with my father, he was like, to the school. I always I'm very close to my father, so I used to go with him. And the school, like going to the camp, it's not even like a human life there. You can like step on the sewage, and there is it's like river walking. And I was remember telling my father, he told me like, be careful with the way you walk. And I was telling him like, but this dirty water, I didn't know how old I was, not realizing what this kind of water. And he was telling me, but did you see there is fish? And I was imagining, like I started really believing there is fish. So I loved that scene, like there is fish there. I wish I was able to bring picture to show you the school, the camp, and my father, because father is a beautiful man, resilient man, strong man, as many of those Palestinian men that they humiliate them. One memory of my grandmother, when I was young, we moved, after that we lived in a village, which is like across of the river Jordan. And it's high like this in the mountains called Waqqas. It's not important, it's just in the mountain, and you can see like, if you go there, I used to love to go there because after this long expulsion, Palestinians want to continue to live because they love life, so start establishing themselves. So my father moved to the city, and we asked my grandmother, Amina, like, you have to move with us. She refused, because my grandmother, Amina, she, to the last day of her life, she was putting the key between her heart. And always she said, and I used like every Friday, we have school off, we go to the village. So my grandmother, she used to tell me, look, I swear I remember, like the image is just so clear in my mind. She told me, look to the mountain, because you can see Bisan actually. You can see in the cloud, you can see Bisan from Jordan. So she said, look, that is Kawkab al-Hawa, the star of the winds, her village, because it was in the top of the mountain. She said, look, do you see that fume coming? I swear I used to imagine that I'm seeing that as she's cooking, like her kitchen, the cooking, like the favor of the, what they call it, favor of fume. Till now, like even one time I wrote a poem about this, because I just felt like I can see it. Yeah, I was telling her, yes. She was telling me her dream. or her imagination, or her whatever in her mind. And as a kid, I saw it. I saw Kawkab al-Hawa, and I saw stuff coming out, like, but my grandmother and my father and my mother, my other grandfather, they all buried on that village, the closest to Palestine. It's really ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Why people don't want to educate yourself? This book is not written by my father. It's not written by my grandfather. It's written by a historian, Israeli man. It's just reading it is traumatizing enough. Looking to my kids, like checking their family name and their villages here, the villages that they changed the name, it's traumatizing enough. Gaza today, Israel, they did a great job in being criminals. They're so perfect in being criminals, Like, I was thinking, like, the one who's so accepting accepting the fact that I can give my grandmother house to somebody who's Israeli to live with a Palestinian. Like, it's today, like, why I have to go back. I need to go back. One of the memories, like, is so traumatizing. In the 70s, see how many years after 1948, my father, I will never forget this, because there is a program aired from Syria, from Damascus. It's called, I think, Sawt al-Quds, the Voice of Jerusalem. That program was only for all these Palestinians who were expelled in 1948, 1967, to find their family member. I remember my father, like, sit and just hear, like, people in Brazil, they can send message, say, my name is Ahmed Muhammad Bishtawi. I am now in Brazil. My name, Fatima Ahmed Ibrahim Bishtawi. I now in Lebanon. They can't even after all these years, they cannot find their people. What kind of conscience the world is witnessing? This is not any genocide. This is really traumatizing enough. And I hate to cry, but I cry every day in the night, because I feel betrayed by so many people. The image of my father and my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather, the stories is so much. Everybody tell me, write a book. It's traumatizing enough to come here and tell you these stories. Please educate yourself, because God will question you. Those dead bodies. There is cities, there is restaurants where people go and visit Israel. You're going to a hotel and a restaurant on the mass grave of Palestinian. They build hotels on the mass graves of Palestinians and their bones. But we, Palestinians, will never give up. We will never believe that narrative that we are nothing. We're human. We have culture. We have roots. We have stories. We have dreams. We have airports in Palestine that you use today. We have hospitals that you destroyed. We have hospitals that you're still using. You don't come, I'm sorry, my brothers, Jewish brothers, you don't come to an empty land with no people. You came and stole every Palestinian house. If you have Israeli living in a house there, you're selling their house, these are our house. These are our house, our dreams. You cannot take this away from us, because God put in generation. I see it in my kids, I see it in every person that born to Palestinian family. The trauma of their parents and the dreams, and it still exists and it will continue to exist until Palestine becomes free.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Mariam was next.
This is a poem I wrote. In case you guys don't know, I'm Iman's daughter, Mariam. I'm Palestinian American, and this is a poem I wrote called Tatriz. I walk lengths on the ocean floor with drills for limbs, trekking along the surface, looking for the nearest homeland in between the gaps of the stars. I will still believe in homelands even when the last of stars collide, even when the last of families are forgotten, when our connection is lost forever, when the last black hole corrupts the memory of the last native tongue. I look for a homeland in every person. I long for the community, eating together, sharing stories, rolling up Diwali together, and everyone else calls it dolma or mahshi, but it will always roll off my tongue differently, and I will always long for a homeland that I cannot have. I miss tea parties in gardens we no longer possess, in a home we can no longer sleep in, under rubble, the air we can no longer breathe in nor acknowledge as independent sovereignty. Our history will always cross-stitch our bloodlines back together, floating in the salts, gazing at the stars, admiring stone cities when nothing else mattered, because we were home, riding mediocre roller coasters, now monuments of the ancient past. I have learned to forget the pain, the poverty, the mortality, because the cost of remembering is losing what I desire most, because the maroon red cross-stitch I admire embroidered into the stars to bring them back to life is just one homeland away. One day I will set foot in my homeland. I will be home. Thank you.
So many amazing things, so many terrible things. If you would like to speak, could you raise your hand? Please. And this is your phone? And, yeah. Okay.
It's a valuable book to have.
I think it means a lot that to see everybody coming together despite every horrible thing that's happened, and really being able to see, even if a lot of people are very quiet about it, that there's a lot of people that aren't standing by, you know, like that, that everybody here is just an example of everybody coming together as like a community to not just let it happen, you know, because it takes the voices and just the people being here and speaking to each other to get everybody moving in the right direction, and it's really amazing to see that. So I just want to thank everybody for speaking.
I wanted to ask, are there any elected officials here or representatives, people on the staff? If you could. Yeah, we did tell.
LOL.
Pardon?
LOL.
Oh. I mean, we told them at the last minute, but all you came out for pretty much at the last minute. I have written many letters to our Congresswoman Hayes. She met with people 2 hours. I mean, that's extraordinary that you could meet with a Congresswoman or a Congressman for 2 hours, but it didn't do any good because she was unmoved. Yes. Would you like to speak?
Just a quick.
Yeah.
The next day, she wrote a letter she wrote a public statement asking for a ceasefire. And Senator Murphy did the same thing last week. So things are changing. There are public statements.
Yeah, there's glacial changes in the public statement, but what matters, are they going to vote the money for Israel? Are they going to vote the weapons for Israel? And they keep doing that. I mean, I'll tell you something with Senator Murphy. On February 2nd, Senator Murphy joined with 20 other senators saying UNRWA is indispensable. UNRWA is the UN agency that helps the refugees. 5 days later, he negotiates the deal with the big legislation, money for Ukraine, money for Israel for weapons, just $10 billion, some humanitarian aid, and a bill, a part of the bill that would end any US money for UNRWA. Less than a week later. And that passed the Senate. And that's so important. You know, Trump stopped giving money to UNRWA. Biden put it back. But they could do that just with their own presidential decision. But if it becomes law, that's a whole different thing. And to get it changed, to get a law change is very, very hard. So that's, money talks and other things walk. I'm not impressed, especially by what Hayes has written. But others who would like to speak, please come on up. Just hold it close.
Hi, my name is Marlon. I'm a part of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and I'm part of the International Working Group, which has been making efforts all over the state to push ceasefire resolutions, as well as a campaign, No Appetite for Apartheid, where going to local businesses, grocery stores to ask them to pull Israeli products off the shelves. Like everybody here, everyone's moved by all the stories, all the horror, all the tragedy happening right now that we're seeing in Palestine. And I'm sure it's something that's, for some, it's something that is close. It's something that affects relatives, cousins, aunts, family. Others, it's seeing, what our government is doing, the complete lack of any empathy, any care for life, and just the treatment of human beings as lesser than animals, lesser than anything. And it's painful. It's painful that, for 4 years ago, we all witnessed, thousands of people dying, seeing family die from a disease that our government was unwilling to address. And we all lived through that trauma, that mass death incident, and without any care. And then now, instead of a disease going and killing people, it is people going out and murdering others to clear land, to build on people's just ancestral lands. And that's something that I know also hits close to so many people over here in the US. My own great-grandfather, his family was murdered by their neighbors or settlers in his hometown, and he had to be taken safe passage to a neighboring city. And that wasn't in the Middle East, it wasn't over here in North America, that happened in Brazil. And that was just, only because his mother is indigenous, because his father is African, that happened to him. And the same violence happened over here in Connecticut to the indigenous peoples, and that's still ongoing as indigenous people over here continue to fight for their sovereignty and to be recognized as a people within this state. Because even our state charter would pay bounties, talking about issuing bounties for people to bring the scalps of men, women, and children. Over in Mystic, I think it was the Pequot people, there had a village massacred, burned down by British settlers. And they're making way after clearing people, displacing them off the land over here in Connecticut. Connecticut became a major arms dealer, producing weapons from the 1780s until now, making the weapons that would continue to push indigenous people further and further off their lands over here in North America. And now that so much land has been displaced over here, Connecticut turns over to West Asia, dealing weapons to the Israelis to push the indigenous people over there off of their land. And it's sickening. It's sickening to see people who take on, Zionism, people who stand, on the bones of their ancestors, who have faced genocide, who have faced colonialism, to stand on their ashes and to say that it is now okay for them to do it to another people. I couldn't imagine standing on my ancestors' graves like that. I'm sure many people over here couldn't imagine doing the same. And even our own Senator Murphy has shown imperialist rhetoric, imperialist dogma. It's like a public tweet that he wrote when it was talking about Venezuela, saying that then it got embarrassing in April 2019 that we tried to organize a kind of coup, but it came a debacle. This is one of our elected representatives openly just discussing the complete lack of respect, lack of care towards an entire people's sovereignty to displace, to control land, to produce wealth from it. And yeah, I would like to say too that, DSA is, attempting to work with more groups. We are part of the Palestine Coalition of Connecticut, working with many other organizations. And I would also like to get into more contact with people over here within Danbury, within Western Connecticut, to start pushing for more action, more organized action, whether it is going to businesses, trying to pull products off the shelves, organizing protests, collectively learning from one another and learning what's happening within the country, because this can't continue to go on. It feels terrible to know that it's living over here in the warmth and shelter, being able to go to the doctor without threat of soldiers attacking it. And then to see the same country that that I'm living in right now, to be committing all this horror, as well as to also see all the injustices that relatives and people in my own community are facing right now, whether it's immigrants or people from the Latin American community, other immigrant communities being forced to stay in concentration camps and ICE detention centers, or the continued displacement of indigenous peoples on these lands, and the continued demonization of xenophobia against immigrants, the demonization against the LGBTQ community. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Did you get this? Maybe you could pass it in the back. I think there's a few.
Sure.
Yeah, if you didn't get the leaflet before, if you came late, we have that for you. Before I call on the next person, we have a lot of your names over the years and in the registration, but I wanted to send a contact list out, so if you could, put put your name and email, phone, that kind of thing, and have mercy on us and print clearly, because it's so hard sometimes figuring out what people are writing. Something that occurred to me a little while ago. You know, sometimes people say, well, what about the hostages? Right? Well, okay, yes, let's talk about the hostages, all the hostages. There's 100, 130 still left, and by the modern laws of war, you're not supposed to take hostages. Soldiers, and some of the people taken were soldiers, that's, you know, different, but certainly an old person or women and so on. But what about the people on the West Bank who have been taken? By the Israeli army figures, they had about 4,500 Palestinians in jail in August or September of last year. Now, there's 9,000. Thousands of people more. We're not talking about 130 people. We're talking about 4,000 or 5,000 more people who they just grabbed. They could use them as bargaining chips. And the conditions they have are awful, awful. Who would like to say something? We have about 15 minutes more. Please, come on up, and I'll call on you next.
She can go first.
Okay?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon all of you. You know, after hearing the speech of Iman and Bushra and all other peoples, we all already have, you know, our hearts already bleed to hear every day so many news about this. But right now when I heard Iman, it gives me so much pain in my heart that really I have to quote the words of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith, that az-zulmu zulumatin yawmil qiyamah. So whoever is doing this operation, whoever is doing this genocide, they are going to face the like darkness at the day of judgment. So they are going to definitely, because this world is going to end. And everyone has to, you know, actions are reactions. We have to, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God, we have to face God. So they are all human beings, whoever Israelis are and doing this genocide. So they are going to suffer. Just think about that. We wish that God guide them and they ask forgiveness from God and cease fire, and, you know, they cannot return whatever the lives already lost. So I will say that please everybody make a lot of du'as for these peoples, because du'as are answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever people are suffering, they are suffering, it looks like suffering, and they are suffering, but they are just like, if you listen the Prophet stories, they are suffering, but they are not suffering because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the God with them. So it looks like they are suffering, but they are like fighting as an angels there. You know, people reported that it looks like the angels are there. So this is what it is. I just want to say thank you so much.
Brother, please come up. Just put something down and then you can grab it. Just hold it close to your mouth.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juan Fonseca. I was able to make it, drove 3 hours here. I live here in Danbury, and I was present at the visual the other night at the City Hall with some of you, and I am glad to be here with all of you again. I came and I want to talk to the white people in the room. I didn't come to talk to Muslims, and and Palestinians or people that have a direct connection to the genocide that is happening in front of our eyes. Because I have been talked at many times whenever I experienced violence from systems of oppression in this country. Many white people have talked at me about these issues, and I don't want to do that because I don't have the words to explain how I feel, how much my heart hurts for all of you. There is this poet from Mexico, where I was born, and he's an Afro-Mexican immigrant that is undocumented and lives here in the US. I actually really like poetry, have always liked poetry, and I follow him, and I really like his stuff, so I like to share something that he wrote. Often I think about the failure of language. How does one create verbs and adjectives to describe terror? How does one describe a form of resilience that requires the magic of 326 different indigenous communities? Is there a noun for the type of energy the black body feels when senses danger? Is there an adjective for the type of sex the alienated want to have in order to stop time? Is there a verb for traveling into another dimension to understand how the self is surviving? Is there the possibility of being human once again? Is there a method in which to make sense of life and remember that after all, the violence is still an embodied subject making joy out of all that is supposedly dead? Is there a glossary for those who have arrived and have no home? Those who were forced to migrate out of their land? And what about those who cannot remember anything before the crossings? Sometimes I think about the failure of language. Language once tried to fool me into thinking that the black, alienated, self-human, indigenous, dead, arrivants, and crossers could not speak. Language I do not speak, I scream. I wanted to share this again. I think that has a connection to what we're witnessing, to what Palestinians have been experiencing for decades. Another reason why I follow, his name is Alan, him is because, again, he always talks about how our struggles are connected. And I guess the one thing that, again, I would ask to the white bodies in the room here tonight, it's to use the power and the privilege that you all have now more than ever, because we need you. Not because you are our saviors, but because we need you. And I do believe in everyone's humanity. And I think that now more than ever, it's time for us, the people that cannot relate in the dimensions that the people that are being affected can, to really think what action we can take here in our city and in the state. The last thing that I'll say is with with all the people that are here tonight. One of the things that we say in organizing is that movements are built in relationships, and relationships are built at the speed of trust. And I think that now more than ever, it's so important for us to build relationships with one another and know who and the who's of who we are. And to come together, because I do think that we have power, and I think that power is the ability to act, and we all can act. And if our elected officials do not want to hear us, I want to invite you all to come together so they don't sleep at night. That's where we're at. There is nothing else that we can do to convince them. If we still have to do anything to convince them of anything, then we already know that that's not the people that we need to go to. And again, I do think that it is their duty to respond to the community. And I think that when we come together and we're so loud that again, they can hear us even in their dreams. That's the one way that we could have some impact. Peter Boucher said on Tuesday that we have raised his empathy, and that's great for him. That still needed that. And what we need of him right now is to have the courage to take action. And I think that, again, I hope that we can come together and try to figure out how we can do that. The other thing I'll say is that I'm human, and I also messed up. And I think that all of us do, and sometimes we take missteps. And I think that in this moment, I always remind myself that I am moving imperfectly, and that there is no other way for me to move, and that I will misspeak, and that I will take the wrong step, and that I will say this wrong thing. But I know where my heart is, and my heart is with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have just a little bit more time. I wanted to mention one thing. This morning, I was at a press conference in Hartford. In January, end of January, there was a demonstration for Palestine in West Hartford. And they were in front of Webster Bank, and people put Post-it notes on there talking about a company, an Israeli company that the bank has some relationship with. It's named Elbit, and it's the biggest weapons company in Israel. And I know about that because part of the pension fund of teachers and public employees in Connecticut has $1 million invested in Elbit. So it's a bad company, it makes drones and so on. Well, somebody threw some red substance like paint on the bank building. So they arrested a man from West Haven, a young man, and they charged him with a hate crime. You can hate a bank? I mean, is a bank an ethnic group? I don't want to talk about the logic, but it's something, well, Elbit's an Israeli company, so he hates Jews. You know, this kind of nonsense. There's a lot of good reasons to dislike Elba that have nothing to do with bias or prejudice or bigotry. But please keep an eye on that case. And it was really good because there was over 40 people at this press conference in solidarity with the fellow. We did video of the whole thing. If you go to YouTube, search for The Struggle Video News. That's our channel, The Struggle Video News. And you can find it, and you can see the whole press conference. So please keep that in mind. Who else would like to speak? I think please come on up, and I'll call on you next. Let's see what time it is. Oh, we got about 5 minutes. We got to end. No, go ahead, talk.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I didn't mean to speak tonight, but we all know what's going on, where our hearts and our attention is on Palestine. But also, this is a human issue because if it happens to the Palestinians, it's going to happen to us. I've been saying this for 20 years. It's like, it's coming here. Already, Israeli military come and train the police here in Krav Maga. Go check it out. It's a disgusting form of martial arts. Also, what can we do? When we go home, what can we do? Please look at where your products are bought. Let's boycott Israel. Let's look at the dates. Let's look at the oranges. Make sure. Starbucks is losing billions of dollars. Stop going to Starbucks. Boycott. The other thing is check out war tax. There is a war tax resistance movement. Go home, look it up, see if you can do it. It's a small percentage of our income that we can actually say on the tax return form, we resist it. That will help. If word goes out to wealthy Muslims, create a Muslim bank where we can start banking with Islamic principle so we can get out of their banking system. So we have to create an alternate reality here in America and other countries that is on Islamic principle, that is sound, and that is very good for the community at large. And two more things, I know we have to go. I met Dr. Hajo Meyer. He was in Auschwitz for 2 years and he escaped. And I've read his book, and when I went to the book signing, we were talking and I just asked him, I said, what was it like in Auschwitz? And he got really angry with me. He goes, enough is written about that. Talk to me about Gaza. So I said, okay. And he said, what's happening in Gaza? This is in 2008. He said, what's happening in Gaza right now is much worse than everything I experienced in Auschwitz. So please, be aware of that. Educate yourselves. There are so many books to read. If we get bullied about anti-Semitism, look at Miko Peled. Look at Ilan Papi. Go read some books. Miko Peled's sister, her name is Nurit Elanan Peled, and she wrote a book about racism in Israeli schools, not Palestinians. We teach our kids life. We teach our kids patience. And please, that's all I'm going to say. Go find books, read them. Go look at lectures on the videos and stop being bullied about us being anti-Semitic. We're not. We are humans. Thank you.
I think Hen will be our last speaker. I wrote a book too about Zionists' relationship with anti-Semites. But that's for another time.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. One thing I cannot get past, makes me sleep at night. One number, actually. 17,000 child orphaned. I want you to put this along with the other numbers. But what does it mean for 17,000 child to be orphaned? Some of them lost one parent, some lost two parents, many lost whole families. And not only that, they have no place to go. There is no homes to go back and look for in the remains of their families, or a photo. There is no schools, there is no hospitals, nothing left of life. Tell me how we can live without doing anything for them. If we all walk just our normal life, eat and drink and go to work and think that this is normal, we are committing a crime against them. So it is our duty, every one of them in his own capacity, whether this is walking in the street protesting, whether you are writing, whether you are meeting with officials, whether you are an elected person and have power. Everyone has power in this room and beyond. We all have to use this power. We all witnessing this for the first time, minute by minute. We cannot be silent and we cannot be silenced. So every one of us should look within himself, within what is in my power, and do it. Think of it every day and every night. Because those 17,000 children are going to ask us. Our own children are going to ask us, what did you do when this happened? So talk to your communities, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Protest, come out with us when we call on you. Because we need you. Those 17,000 children needs you. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. We have to leave now. I'm sure we could have lots more stories. Hen said it all, so there's no more need for me. But if you didn't sign the sheet, Ahmed has it, the contact sheet. If you want to sign it, please do. And have a good evening. Bye-bye now.